All right, so thanks for joining. And I am really happy to start discussing the Cudahy's Road Salt Reduction Success Story. We have been doing this since 2013, and I have been asked to talk about one topic, and that's calibration. And it starts with the salt shaker. It really does. And I'm going to give you a little stats on the city of Cudahy. We are on the other Great Lake in Wisconsin, that being Lake Michigan. We are on the southeast corner of the state. We are part of the large Milwaukee metropolitan area. I agree, I've been up in Superior, Wisconsin, so I agree your weather is worse than ours, but ours isn't far behind down here. What's unique about Cudahy is we have 2.5 miles of lakeshore, and we operate a city surface water treatment. So and the water comes from Lake Michigan. It's a potable water supply. We have 2 very large industries here, that being Patrick Cudahy, which is now Smithfield Foods, and ATI Forging. And it's very critical, fresh water is very critical to their operations. So we're attentive to that. The other thing that's unique is that we also, besides maintaining 149 lane miles of roadway here, we have 1.4 miles of State Trunk Highway 794 to maintain. And I have 16 employees that do that winter maintenance. So in any salt reduction program, you need strategy and you need execution. And I'm not going to cover that. I think the Mayor of Superior did cover some of that. That's for another time. But the things you need to know before you tackle any salt reduction program is you need to want to do it. And I really mean that, because if you're not convinced that it's going to save money, if you're not convinced of change, if you're not up for the battle, and you're not worried about the environment, and you don't want to do it, your program is not going to be successful, because it's not going to be that easy. And like the mayor said, your team is critical to its success, and you have to take baby steps. And the most feasible way to reduce salt is calibration. That's what we have found to date. So why did I want to do it? You got to look at these pictures. Now, for anybody that is not familiar with the Milwaukee area, we have the Port of Milwaukee, and salt is brought in on large ships beginning in May, and they usually have the stockpile by the end of October. I do not live in Cudahy. I live about 25 miles northwest of Cudahy. I go over the Hone Bridge, and these salt piles are right below the Hone Bridge. This is what I see on a daily basis coming into my commute. These salt piles, all of these salt piles, go into this big pond right here called Lake Michigan, and these salt piles disappear by April. They're gone. I have seen it for the last 13 years. That's my passion. But if you're not concerned about the environmental issues, do it for the financial sustainability. And what I'm talking about here, I looked at the state bid for 2021-21 snow season. And Milwaukee County and 22 agencies, which the city of Cudahy is part of, that's just Milwaukee County, excluding the city of Milwaukee, they will purchase 74,481 tons of salt at a cost of $4.5 million. That's staggering. That's 1 year basically going down the drain. And that goes to Lake Michigan. Cudahy only purchased 360 tons. So we're not making a huge impact to this. I'll go back to the other slide. So we started in 2013, and since 2013, from 2013 to 2020, we reduced our salt by 69.9%. That gave us a savings of $97,000 in 2020. Over the last 7 years, we've saved around $550,000. So if Milwaukee County agencies would follow our salt reduction, they would literally save $3.6 million annually. And you know, I don't know about you, but I could reconstruct a lot of roadways with that. What I was talking about with the team is critical to your salt reduction. The most critical people is your superintendents and your foremans and your supervisors. When I first started here 13 years ago, why is calibration so important? Because that's where Cudahy, at least for us, we found our largest reduction and our biggest cost savings. When we started in 2013, we had equipment that was manual calibration and electronic calibration. The electronic equipment, the ground speed controls didn't work, sensors didn't work, they were really out of whack. We really didn't know how out of whack they were, but they were. So you're going to have issues with equipment, you're going to have issues with personnel. Because remember, all of those crew people, you know, kind of worked their way up. And so then when they were hired 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, the people that were teaching them were people that didn't exactly know how to do this stuff. And now you're trying to convince them that they have to change. And it doesn't happen overnight. Although I have to say, we saw a 46.5% reduction in calibration. The other additional 20% reduction came from implementing, we use anti-icing equipment. We've done some things with the brine where it comes out in the, you know, in the spreader and the auger. You can see a truck behind or on the slide here. That's our roll-off. I can't say enough about these things. These things are so sweet. Though our trucks, our patrol trucks, our salters, we whip a salter out in 5 minutes and we'll put a chipper box on. They're so versatile. We also have to help the water utility on water main breaks, so we'll flip the salter off and put a regular box on. So calibration, when I say baby steps, got to take baby steps. When we first started, it took us over a week, probably 2 weeks, just to take 6 salting units with 6 crew members, and it was painstaking to calibrate. But that first year, we saw a cost savings of $56,000 out of a $110,000 salt budget. Now that $110,000 is just for salt material only. What I asked the mayor at that time, we don't have a city administrator, I asked the mayor at that time, if I can reduce the salt in half and I save that money, can I use that money to upgrade the equipment and the controllers? Because what always happens in this city is DPW saves money and then it's used to offset overruns in police and fire departments. So any mayors or managers listening, be cognizant, if your DPW is going to be saving money, put it back in the DPW, and this is the way to do it, instead of just throwing it back in the general fund. That new equipment that we purchased, I go back, is the electronic spreaders with ground speed controls and closed loop sensors. Those are important. Our calibration went from 8 hours per truck to about 20 minutes. So equipment setup is critical, is essential. It's critical, and I think shortly you'll see a video that shows that brand new equipment is not correctly set up. I think a lot of people, you know, get their equipment, you know, delivered from Casper and Monroe and think that everything is set up, and that's not the case. And the video will show that. And also, we also have helped out, several communities have asked us to come in. What we find is they'll have the electronic controls, but they don't have a ground speed control and they don't have a closed loop system or sensors. So if any of you foremen or superintendents or DPWs are looking at buying new equipment, make sure that they're ordered correctly, and we can help you out with that. So with that, what I'm going to do is you're going to be watching a short video here, and calibration. Okay.
You need to check when you're getting your salt trucks ready for the season.
Is that better?
First thing you need to check is ground speed.
Yes, that's good.
Go lower right to calibration menu, ground speed, and then down to axle pulses. You can go use that AutoCal feature. You'll drive exactly 1 mile and it will record your axle pulses per mile and it'll figure out the vehicle speed that way. This truck from the factory, it was reading 10 miles an hour too fast when we're applying salt. The second most important setting to check is your pound rev. You'll go down to truck, auger, material settings. You'll go down to displacement. You can use the AutoCal function. You'll choose portable scale. You'll run this at about 30%. It'll count the turns as you dump out salt. You'll weigh it up. You know, we dumped 280 pounds. You hit next, and it will divide the weight that you dumped out by how many auger turns there were. Ours is 14.2 pounds per revolution. From the factory, it said 10.0 pounds per revolution. So it was dumping about 40% more than it thought it was. Next, we can go through and I'll show you a quick way to do a drop test and check that everything's functioning and our calibration's correct. You can go into the menu and enable options, sim speed, so it can simulate a speed and your rate that you're dropping while you're standing still, and you can weigh it. So if you go to sim speed, and the easy way is 30 miles an hour for 2 minutes. That's 1 mile. So you should be able to get 200 pounds, 300 pounds per mile, whatever you have it set for. That's how much weight you should actually have on the ground. That's your check. So we've got our sim speed set at 30 miles an hour. We're going to do a 2-minute test, so that should be 1 mile. And we should have 200 on the ground. That's what we had set for. We'll weigh it up when this is done. So here we're just scooping it up. We can use something as simple as a little scale here. Usually it's around 60 pounds per bucket. We'll weigh up this whole pile and we should have our 200 pounds. So now we kind of did this backwards because our trucks were already dialed in. But I went ahead, set the truck back to stock parameters, how it comes from the factory. I know everybody thinks a brand new truck is ready to go and that's the gold standard of like comparing it to your other trucks, but that's not the case. The parameters in there will just get salt out of the back. Now we went ahead, put it all back to the stock parameters, stock speed, and we're gonna do the same 30 miles an hour for 2 minutes for a 1 mile drop test, and we will see how much of a difference between our calibrated pile and then to our uncalibrated pile. All right, so we finished our test. This is the uncalibrated where we set it back to stock. This one's over double the weight as our calibrated. With this 1 mile simulation, using the truck as it is set brand new from the factory, when we thought we were putting down 200 pounds per mile, we were actually applying more than double the rate at 407 pounds per mile. It doesn't look like that much of a difference, but this just shows you can't drive behind the truck and adjust on the fly and say, hey, turn it up, turn it down. I know that's the way when I first started here. You'd follow behind the truck and you'd say, oh, turn it up, turn it down. That's too much. You cannot tell by doing it that way. There's no possible way because we don't even know what the weight is until we actually put it in the bucket and weigh it. Thanks for watching. I hope you learned a little something. I tried to keep this short and give an accurate demonstration of the importance of calibrating these salt trucks and how much of a difference adjusting these settings really makes. If you have any questions on how to set up trucks and how to calibrate, reach out and I'll do what I can to help. Thanks.
You just go to your next slide.
Yeah. All right, so these next slides are just kind of a summary of what John did on the videos. If you want to look at this, I'm going to go through them, I'm not going to go through them, but they're there in the presentation, the calibration. And just going back to this one, you can, this one right here. This is kind of where we were at when we first, like back in 2013. In summary, again, you have to have strategy and execution. Cudahy went from using roughly 2,000 tons of salt annually prior to 2013 to about 660 tons. The things you need to know before you tackle any kind of salt reduction program is you need to want to do it, and your team is critical to its success. And for any superintendent out there, any director of public works, any mayor, go back to your garages and ask them to show you how they calibrate. If they're not doing what we just did, and they're like, well, you know, we do this and do that, and we drive behind the truck, and you know, we'll turn and tell them to go up and down. That is incorrect. You're wasting a lot of salt. Again, it's going to be baby steps. Most feasible way to reduce salt is calibration. And our calibration video is on YouTube for anyone that wants it. And with that, I appreciate your time with listening to this. Here's our contact information. We are certainly, we're certainly able to help other communities. John and my crew's been helping out a couple of communities. We send them down there. And COVID's been kind of a little restrictive that way this summer and fall. But they'll actually go down and help the crew calibrate. Or I should probably wait off with questions until after. Okay, got it. Thanks.
Thank you, Mary Jo. And we'll turn it over to Wes.